Riverdale, a dark and moody take on the long-running Archie comic series, just twin peaked into the world last night. Is it worth your time? Stay tuned. This is Screen Junkies News. Hey guys, I'm Sasha Pearl-Raver. With me to discuss all things Riverdale is Screen Junkies News Editor-in-Chief Roth Cornett. Now, Roth, I'm going to ask you the question I asked everybody when I was growing up, and it was my barometer for friendship. Who do you like better, Betty or Veronica?
Okay, so I can't really answer that with any kind of clarity or objectivity. And the reason is my best friend, Lisa Shannadelia Araka, and I went to the Forbidden Planet in New York every single week to buy our comic books. And every single week we bought our Archies, and they called us Betty and Veronica.
You were Betty.
So I was Betty. And so by default, I have always sort of like had a relationship with Betty where I relate to her, I love her. And Veronica was really mean in the comics.
In the comics.
Not in the show. But I also would get really frustrated by Betty when she wouldn't stand up for herself. And I found the same thing. Like, I almost got embarrassed for myself in her embarrassing moments in the pilot. I looked at my boyfriend at one point and I was actually embarrassed because she...
Wow.
Isn't that weird?
You're in for a hell of a ride. So you guys, Riverdale premiered on the CW last night. It is a new offering from the Greg Berlanti universe. It is a redo basically of the Archie comic franchise. So if you know Archie and Betty and Veronica and Jughead and Reggie, there are these friends who hang out in Riverdale and everything's fun and they go to Pop's chocolate shop and Betty and Veronica fight over Archie. Well, this is not that. This is basically if you took Dawson's Creek and put it in Twin Peaks.
Okay, so this is the other thing that I think is amazing because they brought up Twin Peaks, I think a year and a half ago at TCA's when they were talking about developing this show. And I was like, what's going on? I know my Archie and I know my Twin Peaks and I love those two things, but how do they go together? And what's amazing is that in the casting of the parents, they tell us what this show is. So they cast Macon Amick as Betty's mother, Alice Cooper. Also amazing, Alice Cooper.
Yeah, Alice Cooper.
Let's just hang out there for a minute.
Alice Cooper.
Had you forgotten? Because it is still amazing.
Alice Cooper.
And then they cast Luke Perry.
Luke Perry, who is so good.
Luke Perry, who is so good.
Look at that. Look at that Luke Perry face.
As Archie's dad. And so they're telling you this is 90210 meets Twin Peaks. And that's exactly what they deliver. This is the CW. It is a cavalcade of piercing eyes and sculpted cheekbones and sharp jaws.
I mean, the abs. The Archie ab shot, which was just so ridiculous. They're like, Archie got hot over the summer. And he's just shirtless. And you're like, get that boy a sandwich. Poor Archie is starving to death, but hot.
Yeah.
So hot. So the show is a whodunit. There is a murder, possibly a death that sort of starts the show.
Well, we know by the end of the episode that it was definitely a murder because there's a bullet in his head.
There's a bullet, y'all. There's a spoiler, but it's a bullet. So whodunit. We are going to have 13 episodes where we get to explore what's going on, what the dark secrets of Riverdale are. And this whole time, we're following this core group. So I will admit, I was a huge fan of 90210, of Dawson's Creek. Our friend Charlie was talking about the OC, the Cooper relationship there. I also loved Gossip Girl. So when I started with this show, I was like, oh, this will be a similar thing. Here's what I love so much about Riverdale. They do not pit Betty and Veronica against each other. This is not about Betty and Veronica wanting the guy. They are friends. I have seen up to episode 4, and there is a great sort of anti-slut-shaming episode in episode 3.
Well, I'm saying yes, I haven't seen it. I've only seen the first episode, the pilot so far.
But I love that they're creating a relationship where all of the weird sexual tension, there is still the sexual tension between Archie and Betty because she's in love with him.
Yeah.
But it's not about that. Instead, we have this amazing Miss Grundy character to be the creepy third wheel. We have so many fun, scenery-chewing characters.
Well, you know what's funny about the Betty and Veronica storyline? I'm really happy about that too, because it's so great to see a female friendship, but not just a female friendship, the complexities of female friendship, where you do have to confront things like your jealousy, sometimes with your friends. I know that I have friends that are like wildly, amazingly good at things and beautiful and successful and ridiculous like you. And you have to like go inside yourself and be like, okay, I'm going to turn that into admiration and love, you know? And it's, I like that you have to see, I mean, Veronica's beautiful. It's insane. And Betty's going to have to confront that in herself. But I think in the newer runs of the comics, that like the ones probably that we were reading, it was still that rivalry.
Yeah.
But in the newer runs, I think there is more of that dynamic between Betty and Veronica.
Oh, I love that. Well, I also have to say, Lily Reinhart, who plays Betty Cooper, that girl I am pegging as the Michelle Williams breakout.
Yeah.
She is a phenomenal actress. Also, KJ Apa, who plays Archie Andrews, I think is great. But this was my shock. Cole Sprouse, who was the little kid in Big Daddy, who was on The Sweet Life with Dylan and Cody, plays Jughead, and I had no idea. He's all dark and broody. Look at that. Look at that Dane DeHaan situation we got going on there.
We're going to get into Jughead
in a second. But the acting is great, and I love Lily Reinhart. But there are so many things about the show.
I think Veronica was the standout.
Really?
I do.
See, this is great. We can all have something we love.
As much as I love Betty, and you know I do.
But let's get into the mystery here. So you can't have a good whodunit without wondering whodunit. There are many suspects.
Mm-hmm.
Roth,
let's break it down.
Run down who done it possibly, and I love theories.
I love fan theories. So there's the first and most obvious suspect is the one that lied about what happened to her brother, and that's Cheryl Blossom,
who is off her nut.
Who's off her nut?
She's insane. This girl is insane.
Insane. She's taken up the queen bee role that Veronica would have had, right? And so we still have that in the show, and there is a very seemingly possibly incestuous thing going on there.
Yep.
There's a lot of sexual tension between a lot of there. You know, I would say that definitely on the show, sexuality is a moving target. Like I'm shipping all kinds of people every other scene, but not the siblings. That's the one I certainly don't ship. And there is something weird going on there. She said that he fell into the lake. He obviously was shot.
But he was also a water polo player.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't swim. Water polo is one of the most difficult sports. And he was also a football player. You can swim in a lake.
Exactly.
So we know something's fishy. And Cheryl comes off like an absolute lunatic.
And she also comes off as somebody that would be incredibly jealous if her brother were involved with another turn to her.
We'd introduced questionable.
And this is the thing about this version of these characters. Okay, obviously Alice Cooper's kind of mean. She's very high strung. She said, the moment where she has to gotta come out at some point.
I want it to be Betty. I want it to be Betty who did it. Like walking into, like a Superman comic book and being like, oh no, Superman lost his mind and killed everyone on.
What do you think of that?
Seems to be up to some questionable. You can't have sex with your student and not be considered somebody of questionable
low moral character.
Thank you.
But at the same time, he's her alibi and she's his. So I almost feel like we have to knock them. Moose and Kevin.
I love this as a theory, and I also love Kevin as a character.
Yes.
Moose, we barely got to see anything with. He was just sort of like one of Reggie's underlings. But this is... and that's also social commentary.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that Greg Berlanti likes to do, and this show is totally ripe for.
What about Reggie? You brought that up.
So I think that this is a possibility. Reggie is one of the most important characters in the Archie comics, and we met him briefly, having now watched up through episode 4, I wish season 4. He's barely used, which makes me think, are they burying the lead? Are they trying to get us to think that it is one of the Coopers when actually maybe it's exactly what you're saying about Moose, but it was with Reggie instead of with Moose?
Ooh.
There's a bunch of possibilities. They're not utilizing him enough right now. So I wonder what they're saving him for.
Okay, that's a possibility. And then outlier possibility is Jughead, who shows up at the very end.
Yes.
Obviously something. First of all, the secondary mystery right now is what did Archie do to What did you do to Jughead?
What did you do? They're supposed to be
Jughead?
best friends, and he has a lot of pain.
There is betrayal.
There is something going on.
There is hurt. You have amends to make, Archie. It's very
How
clear.
How could you do that to Cole Sprouse?
Or he's a murderer.
Or that.
Or he's a murderer.
We don't know.
We don't know.
But we want to know what you guys think. This is my new favorite thing to theorize on that isn't Westworld. So please comment below. You can always click here for more Screen Junkies news. Tweet us at SG News and tune in again. Riverdale's back, 9 p.m. on Thursday on the CW. Watch. It's so